So first of all, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining our today's online meetup. We at NGN International organized it today as we are the full-fledged systems integrator and IT consultant established in 2015 in Bahrain as part of NGN group of companies. And my name is Vadim Bolotnov. I'm Technical Operations Director at NGN International. And I will introduce our partners and valuable speakers today. Today with us, Pavel Melnichenko, Chief Technology Officer at Airome, who will explain how to make transactions confirmations on mobile phone convenient and secure. Hi, Pavel.
Yes, hello. Hello.
And also Tim Bobak, Middle East and Africa Director at Group IB, will give us a deep dive into implementing an effective digital anti-fraud strategy. Good morning, Tim.
Good morning. Thanks very much, Vadim. And hello to everyone over in Bahrain. Hopefully we'll have the quarantine over soon enough and we'll be able to come visit you guys in person.
Some of the questions we are going to discuss today is how to balance security and user experience in digital banking. What shall financial institutions do to provide their clients with convenient and secure online transactions, and how to identify online banking frauds and thefts before they occur. If you have any questions during the meeting, please use Q&A tab or conversations section. Just please check that you are sending to all panelists and attendees so all of us can see the question. All our today's guests will receive an online trial access to our partners solutions, which is Pay Confirm, a mobile transaction authentication signature platform, and Secure Bank, a client-side fraud and attack prevention system. And of course, all of these trials can be configured remotely as per current situation. So we are planning to fit in 1.5 hours and finish by 11:30. So that's it from my side, and I wish you all to enjoy the discussion and have a good time today with us. So Pavel, the floor is yours, and good luck, and please share with us your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Vadim. I will share my presentation. I will show you some slides. Okay. Can you see my slides? Is it okay? So this is the regular this is the regular question in online meeting. Does anyone do anyone hear my voice, and is it okay with the slideshow? So
yes, all is good.
Okay, thank you. Actually, today I want to discuss not technology and technological stuff, but a lot of things about security and user experience. You know, from point of view how to do this. Not about implementation. And in implementation, it's all about principles and how to build secured digital banking in 2020 with a good user experience. So the first thing I want to discuss and I want to share with you is why we can discuss this topic, why we have experience in this area. Airome is a Singaporean company, but with Russian roots because of our comment and our staff going from Russia. We have Russian roots, and we have about 9 years experience in area of security of online and digital banking. Our specialization is you know, we are pointed on this security on this type of security, completely mobile, digital, and online banking, and we have a lot of experience in our country, in Russia, and we have about 70 successful projects, including eight of top 10 Russian banks, and we have different products for legal entities and for personal users. So actually, Russian digital banking is the second in EMA region. It's regarding to Deloitte report. I think it's last year. And this means that Russian people of digital, mobile, and online banking looks like this cat on the screen. They're completely happy. And to do this, Russian banks they have to face two major problems. The first one, they have to provide the most convenient and the most enhanced and the most developed user experience for their clients, because of Russia is a very, very big country with a lot of regions. And for example, if some bank want to provide their services to all of the country, it's very important to provide convenient and very effective digital channels to reach all of the clients in whole country. And the second problems for our bank is that we live with Russian hackers. It's like a trademark, in the whole world. We live with them all entire life, and this means that digital channels, online and mobile banking, from one point of view, must be the most convenient and the most developed and provides a lot of services. And from the second point of view, these channels are always attacked by our criminal elements. Second place in the EMA region, we think that this is the good result, and it means that our banks they requires from us, from vendors of security mechanisms and security technologies, to build the most secured and the most convenient tools to provide for end users of this of our banks. So and we see that in a few years, fintech companies and banks they are trying to provide more and more enhanced and more and more developed financial services, and all of the banks, they want not to be just safe for your money. They try to build ecosystems, and someone tried to build like a super apps to involve the users in financial activities and to do all of the regular things like rent payment, I don't know, like make shopping, to buy tickets to the cinema or the theater, and all of this stuff they try to build in their ecosystem, in the applications or online banking or some services, and they try to combine all of this stuff around them. And this means that banks and fintech companies they try to build all of these ecosystems together, because of bank like main branch of financial institution. This is not their business to build these services. And from another point of view, fintech companies who build these services, they need to have a financial underground under this. And we see that all of these movements go into like big ecosystems, which trying to provide for end customers a lot of services. And this means that security problems, they are going the one of the main points of building these services. So, and if we are talking about security, we know that bank, like big organization, can build around this infrastructure like a perimeter, and it looks like this fort on this picture. And they can make rules, they can make a lot of regulation inside this company. But when we are talking about providing services for end user, this organization cannot provide these security requirements and all of security stuff to end user, because this is not convenient, and this is very hard to explain to end user why he have to follow all of these security rules and to use all of these security mechanisms. And if they try to do this for end user, it looks like this. It's some kind of pain. Because of, for example, for my mom, it's very hard to understand how to secure the credit card or their account, why she have to use some strong password that she cannot remember. And to use, for example, like Vadim said, email to receive one-time password. My mother, this is not familiar with email at all. Not and it's very hard to explain her what is one-time password and how to receive one-time password via this email. So, and if we're talking about one-time password, we think, our company thinks that this is one example of a pain. Because of we see that to receive one-time password, it can be SMS, or it can be push, or it can be, for example, email. It can be one-time password generators based on smartphone or separated device. This is a very inconvenient thing. For example, if you receive one-time password via SMS, try to receive this SMS if you are in Rome. We have an examples when, for example, you are like a CEO of a company, and you have to pay your employees in one exact day. And in that exact day, if you're on vacations, or if you're on, for example, in another country, and you have to receive this one-time password, and it can be very difficult because, for example, if you're roaming, SMS can be delivered in 20 minutes and 30 minutes, or it can not be delivered at all. So, and if we are talking about, for example, separated devices, it's not a convenient thing to take this device always with you. And we have a lot of examples with the one-time password. So we think that for end users, this is very inconvenient thing. So, and we think this is not right situation, and to make a user happy, like a cat on the second slide, we our philosophy, it's like you should think a little about security and how to provide for your users security where it's needed. This is very important thing because security where it's not required, it's an evil. And if you provide security, it must be the real security. And the security tools that you are using and mechanisms and method must be the simplest. This for end user, it must be the simplest way to be secured, and it must be cost effective because of you can build very strong security mechanisms, but if they will be not cost effective, for example, for your business, for business of a bank, it will be cheaper to accept risks and to lose money even than implement your security mechanisms. So, and we have started to talk about mobility, and we think that mobile device that every user has in our world and in our time, this is abilities for from security point of view, because we know that these devices, this is like a personal computers with a strong cryptographic, separated cryptographic chips with a lot of computing power. And we can use this device to, and if we use this device in the right way, we can provide major security mechanisms with this device for our users. And if we can think and we can provide just one green button on user smartphone that will tell for bank like a customer of this service that user agreed to do some action, and to do this in secured way. Actually, this will be the main purpose for us, like from security point of view. Actually, when we're talking about remote channels, the main security point is to get agreement from a user that he agreed to do the exact action. For example, it can be login operation, or it can be transfer money from our account, from one account to another, or it can be signing of some additional agreement for base agreement with the bank. And if this process will be secured properly, process of agreement, it will be enough, and it will remove the major security pains of bank like a customer. So we think that security mechanisms should provide just one button. Maximum it must be two buttons. I agree, and the second I disagree. That's all. No any actions like receive one-time password and retype it. No any actions like give separated device and do some actions with them. No separated hardware. Just one button on a user's smartphone that he's agree or he's not agree. This is the hardest thing. The hardest thing that users should do from security point of view. And actually, we see in our project that is really enough. It can be done like this. And when we do mechanisms like this, maybe this is happiness, and this is all things from security point of view that users should do. But we can think a little bit more. And the question in this area is our security the simplest? Because we see in our projects that even one button, one green button, I agree, can be very hard for some users. Because of they do not want to do anything in our era of smart cars that use autopilot to bring you from one place to another, in area of artificial intelligence that knows all about us and can prevent our needs before they became true. And maybe we can use the same techniques to provide security services. And actually, we think that yes, we can. And we know because of we as a security services, security technologies provider, and you as a banks, we know our user, and we can collect a lot of information about his behavior, about his usual transactions, about his usual actions, about his devices, about his habits, and all of this stuff. And when we work with the user's mobile phone, we can collect more and more information, not just about users' behavior, but about users' devices too. And when we can analyze all of this data, we can decide, even without any actions from user, even without press this green button, agree or not agree, that user really wanted to do this exact operation and to make this exact transaction, because of the principles can be like this user usually does these transactions in this period for this sum from this device, from this location, and this is a big probability that he will do this operation in the next month, for example, and the next month, and the next, and the next, and the next. And why we should disturb our user to ask them, is he agree or not? Because if he do this in the same time, in the same way, we think we can decide that this operation will be provided by this user too. And in this case, we can do not to disturb our user at all. So, but if we see some suspicious operations or transactions, and in this case, only in this case, we should communicate with our user and ask him for agreement. Actually, we call this like an adaptive security. And when I tried to find the picture to show how convenient it can be, what adaptive means, it's I found a picture of these beautiful sneakers because of we think, and our purpose and our goal to make the security technologies and security techniques as convenient as these sneakers. Our end user should not think about security at all. Our user must be secured, like foods in these sneakers, and it can be as convenient and these shoes too. So our goal and our technologies and all of our products are built with these principles, and we think that we are quietly successful with this because of, as I said at the beginning of my presentation, that we have a lot of customers in the very difficult regions, in the very difficult region like Russia and Eastern Europe, because of our clients. They need and they require from us the most convenient and the most secure and the cost-effective security techniques, technologies, and products. So that's all. Thank you for your attention. This is my short presentation. If you have any questions, please, I will try to answer.
Thank you, Pavel. Thank you for this presentation and for the overview of current situation with the security and payment transactions. I believe we can ask our guests to send questions during the rest of the time of our online meeting, and at the end of the meeting we will aggregate all the questions and we will have a consolidated Q&A session. So let me remind you that please use Q&A tab or chat for asking your questions, and I think we can continue with our second speaker team, who will tell us more about secure banking and how to eliminate threats and threat actors through a mobile security and mobile banks. So guys, please continue asking your questions to Pavel, and we will have a Q&A session at the end. And team, welcome, please, the floor is yours.
Thanks very much, Vadim. Are you able to see my screen currently?
Yeah, I do. Maybe we can ask our...
if you can see it, then I assume that everyone will be able to.
Yeah, hopefully.
So basically, as we outlined at the beginning of the call today in discussions, we're obviously talking about a holistic problem, which is digital fraud, and that happens across all the different channels, whether that's PC or web. And there's a number of ways of preventing this kind of fraud from happening. I think that most financial institutions primarily focused on, making sure that their environment itself is secure. So whether that's with firewalls or other IT security infrastructure, having a SOC. But one of the key problems that we see that pretty much all organizations are having and struggling with is that the fraud protection and prevention teams are very squarely still in the 20th century. A lot of the teams in that area do not understand the various different types of digital fraud. And as you can see here, there are many different types. It could be initially starting from social engineering, malware, user account fraud or money laundering, payment fraud, so card not present based fraud, additional attacks through different devices, using for example, mobile device APIs, and through additionally bots. What we've seen that primarily over time, banks still haven't managed to keep up with this, and there's almost like a political football that's being passed between the two organizations or two parts of an organization where fraud doesn't understand the digital channel and attacks are increasing. But at the same time, the cybersecurity guys don't want to get involved because they consider that their job is just protecting the infrastructure of the organization, but not its customers. Well, unfortunately, that situation's changed because of the amount of fraud that is now taking place. If you think about any of your friends and family, how many of them, in the last, let's say, 3 or 4 months, let's say since the beginning of the year, have come to you and said, my card was compromised, or someone tried to use my card online in digital payment, and either they stole money and or it was successful. I mean, I can think of at least 3 or 4 people not in sort of cybersecurity, but through members of my family and extended, acquaintances who have faced any of these kind of attacks, whether it's malware, whether it's card not present based fraud. So, if you put that at a level of the country like the UK, you're talking about millions of attacks every year, and those attacks are now going global. I think one of the issues, though, that's currently taking place in markets that I cover, such as the Middle East and also Africa as well, is that because of the lack of awareness in anti-fraud departments, they're not able to understand the full scope or the full impact or the full totals of digital fraud that are currently coming in, and they're being misclassified as traditional types of fraud. So there are all of these new types of attacks that are possible, and they carry less risk for fraudsters and for criminals, because obviously if you can sit in, let's say, the United Kingdom and attack Bahrain from here, and steal from banking customers, but then receive funds, let's say in the United States, that you can then launder using Bitcoin, what's the risk? If you're versus, for example, going and doing, the traditional methods of fraud, like check fraud or, robbing a bank that has a much more physical impact, it's very obvious that criminals are going to switch towards these kind of attacks. And as banks grow their digital channels, and as we discussed, as end users start to become more digitalized and their habits change, the scope for online attacks increases massively. So what essential, what should be done about this? Well, basically, there's a bunch of technologies that you can use across your entire digital environment. So you might have a mobile you might have a mobile application. You can put SDKs into that for monitoring. You might have a web app, for example, or a series of web applications, for corporate banking, for retail banking, for you might have it for insurance. You might have digital sign-up. That's another thing that banks are increasingly doing, is allowing for a fully digitalized sign-up process. Now, what you need to be doing is then looking at those particular sessions from the very beginning. So from the moment someone opens their mobile application until they shut it down, or the moment that someone first touches your site on their digital journey. And you need to be monitoring that. And this could be pretty much anything. It could be, just looking at their behaviors, how they're clicking. Does that look like their previous sessions? It could be their device fingerprint. What does that device look like? How has it changed over time? Are there specific malware-based events happening on the end user's device, or their remote access tools? Is there bot activity? All of these different technologies need to be instituted on internet banking sessions. The reason is because otherwise, large amounts of fraud do happen. I mean, there's obviously quite shocking statistics about it, but the cost on a global level is now reaching multi-billion-dollar levels. And if it hasn't yet visited you too heavily in Bahrain, we do see that in other markets where there's I guess maybe a higher population size or a higher digital risk footprint, or countries that are targeted more because of their size, like Saudi Arabia, they're obviously having very, very significant levels of fraud. And they're having to now integrate this digital analysis into their traditional anti-fraud tools. So whether those are platforms like RSA or FICO or SAS or Interlinks, they're pulling all of this data about the digital session and then using that in real time in order to protect the transactions that are linked into core banking. So a quick word for maybe some of you guys who are more focused on the cybersecurity side, or maybe vice versa on the fraud side. In a financial institution, there's pretty much always some kind of anti-fraud platform. If there isn't, then you might have a lot of fraud. But essentially, that anti-fraud platform will integrate. It's called a transactional anti-fraud system, and those will be integrated into ATMs, core banking, any kind of internet-related banking, and it'll assess essentially all of the variable channels where money is flowing inside of that institution. Now, as part of that, there's obviously digital fraud. Now, digital fraud represents the highest and most frequent type of attack against any kind of institution. The advantage being, like I said, is that no one has to be present when they perform the attack. So in order to perform online monitoring of customer sessions or attacker sessions, you have to then start monitoring, the unknown users. In order to do that, you can institute an SDK into a mobile app or JavaScript that hangs all over the website that you're looking to protect. So obviously can be obfuscated. Now that user and end user device analysis takes place in the cloud, but it obviously can be, for example, like in the new AWS in Bahrain. In country, only information that's anonymized is collected, no transfer information, how much money is going where, no PCI DSS related information. And that then automatically feeds into these traditional old school anti-fraud monitoring systems before transactions are even requested. So what the new generation of anti-fraud is doing is essentially taking a view of online fraud and making that real time, making that view and that analytics happen so that before an attacker even has a chance to commit to doing a fraudulent transaction, information is already inside of the bank, inside of the anti-fraud systems there that allow for those kind of malicious transactions to be blocked. So how does that work? Well, there are many different kinds of attacks. I think we touched on a couple of them, and we're talking about some kinds of COVID related fraud. A lot of the time there'll be various different attacks, like I mentioned. It could be fraud, standard fraud, social engineering. Basically, you need to have a huge amount of information that's fed in because of the complexity of the different kinds of attacks. So to give an example, the most frequent is card not present based fraud. So this is when I've managed to, let's say I'm a criminal, and Vadim, I've got his credit card number, his CVV code, and also the expiry dates. Maybe I've got some address information. So I'll gain that information, and then I'll just use a standard online based tool. I might have access to his mobile device if, for example, confirmation codes are being sent via SMS. I might have a social engineering element, or very frequently, some online transactions do not require any kind of additional authentication. If that's the case, then obviously using that card, that credit card information, you can very easily commit fraud against a bank. So, how is that information made available? Very frequently, there are tools like JavaScript sniffers. Whenever someone does an online transaction on a compromised site, for example, you guys might remember the MageCart attack against British Airways that took place about 1.5 years ago. In those instances, the credit card information of the customers of a bank is being compromised. Now, obviously, what you can do in order to prevent that is monitor on your 3D Secure page, obviously enable 3D Secure, but then create your own analytics by deploying, for example, a solution for digital fraud monitoring onto your 3D Secure page, and then cross-referencing all of the information from previous sessions against that potentially malicious one in order to find it. Because every single time that you're performing a digital action, say I'm using my machine or I'm using Vadim's machine, those will have completely different fingerprints, completely different behaviors. If, for example, Vadim's behind the keyboard, or if I am, I might type slower. I might have a different cadence of typing versus Vadim, or I might move the mouse quicker or slower, or my computer might have a different, WebGL parameter. All of these different things can allow you to recognize who is your normal user and who isn't. There's also huge amounts of other types of fraud that we see happening. One that's very frequent at the moment is people are, instead of, in this case, people are saying, this was an example we were seeing a lot last year, where people would be called up by someone pretending to be an investment broker. They would say, much like a cold call, they'd say, okay, great. We're just going to demonstrate, how to invest to you. You can make some real money. And then what they would do is they would use that opportunity to install malware on the person's PC. In this instance, it wasn't actually malware. It's a legitimate tool called AnyDesk that very frequently, administrators use in networks. And then they use that presence in order to then gain access to the victim's device, then what they did is they took out loans that they then stole from those victims' accounts. So if they have that level of access onto someone's machine, obviously they can perform, they can hide windows, they can, by that I mean like interface windows inside of the Windows platform, so that, no one knows, for example, that their online banking session has been hijacked, that they are still logged in, for example. And then with some additional social engineering, any additional steps through that process may be then performed. So we're seeing many different kinds of new types of fraud. And then obviously this can be picked up by, for example, types of detection based on signatures, based on behavioral analytics. You're also able to identify, using, for example, digital analytics platforms, who is attacking when and where. So, for example, there might be a specific syndicate of fraudsters who are targeting Bahrain. If you have multiple deployments of solutions like Secure Bank, but from the same vendor, then in most cases, you're able to then also identify between different banks and share telemetry, all of the different kind of fraud information about digital attacks and about the people who are targeting your end users and your customers. And this obviously then allows for much quicker detection, much more effective anti-fraud platforms, and better customer engagement, better financial stability, which I think, given the events that are happening at the current time, I think one of the things that we don't need more of is financial instability. So given the fact that you can use platforms like this to cut down losses to banks, to keep customers happy, to make sure that customers, and your staff, in fact, aren't dealing with customer complaints or money refunds, one of the great steps that you can have is securing your customers becomes a professional, competitive and professional advantage. It also decreases the amount of time spent, in investigating attacks. So, underlying this, we operate with Secure Bank, both with the mobile application and the web-based monitoring using device fingerprinting. So the entire platform is tracking the changes over time to a specific end user. And that allows you to identify, for example, if someone is a legitimate user or if, for example, they're spoofing a device. Similarly, criminals are increasingly using bots in order to perform attacks. And that's, for example, to transfer money out of accounts. That can be for performing repeat actions like checking the balance of an account before payday or just after payday, so that people can steal the maximum amount of money once they detect an increase. It could be end user behavioral analytics to identify if it's me or the normal end user behind the keyboard or someone new. And this could also extend to measuring how someone types in real time, and the cadence is there in order to identify if someone is, again, a legitimate user or if they are, in fact, an aggressive attacker. Obviously, as customers have migrated towards the digital channel increasingly, both Android and iOS have to be protected, as well as in some instances BlackBerry, although that is decreasing in popularity. There's still a number of threats that happen on the mobile channel, and that scope for attacks on the mobile channel is increasing. So many of the threat actors that we see are installing fake applications now for end users. They may be performing SIM swapping based attacks or bots attacking via mobile APIs. You've got to have visibility as a bank into those channels, regardless, in fact, of whether you're going to be protecting your end users. If there's mobile APIs that are available, that can lead to very serious breaches and repeat attacks and high-level financial losses that are hard to hide and have to be disclosed. So mobile is essential. There also has to be an element of graphic analysis. I believe I'm in a PowerPoint presentation, so I should be able to play that, indeed. And you should also be able to then understand how these kind of attacks are happening. So, for example, you need to understand who is targeting you, how they're building, their campaigns over time, and allow your analysts to be able to visualize this. A lot of the time, it's not very tangible for an individual or a financial institution or even a manager in a bank to understand the full scope of the fraud that they might be facing and the problems they're in. By performing a proof of concept using our system, obviously you can get a full view over what's actually happening on your internet banking landscape. You can get an insight into one specific machine or a couple of different fraud users targeting hundreds of different accounts, obviously that's never a good thing. And so we're then able to plot that out and just demonstrate, during a test, for example, in a financial institution, just how pervasive fraud is and how much is currently being undetected. Because a lot of fraud that does happen, especially with lower denominations, actually may in fact be missed both by the bank and by the end users. Once you're able to increase that visibility, you're obviously able to protect your end users much more effectively. So that's kind of like a high level about online fraud mitigation strategies, that you need to have visibility into what is actually happening out there during the course of all of your customers' digital sessions. It's pretty standard now with tools like EDR, for example, or antivirus, or SIEM, to be logging all of the events and all of the activity that's happening inside of your network in order to then secure it. Financial institutions accordingly have a responsibility to their customers to make sure that also their sessions and their behavior on the banking infrastructure are also logged and investigated. And if that information can, be used in order to stop fraud, to increase the reliability, increase the security of the bank, and improve it for customers, then I think, it's something that is quite clearly a genuine business case, and also I guess a corporate and social responsibility point. Ultimately, at Group IB, what we are interested in is investigating and stopping cybercrime. So from our side, we're very welcome to offer some proof of concepts around our platform, Secure Bank, to financial institutions in Bahrain in order to align and give them visibility over the types of fraud that their customers may be facing. So I'll pause here. I think we've got questions both for myself and also Vadim and the team from Airome. So I'll stop there, but obviously we're keen to have further discussions about all of the different kinds of attacks that we do see and how we can combat them. So thank you very much.
Thank you, team. Thank you for your presentation. And as far as I understand from, I think, both presentations, it is important to monitor as much information as possible within, whether it is digital banking, online banking, whether it is mobile banking or your customer behavior. And then you can aggregate this information and you can just identify whether it is normal behavior or it is, let's say, malicious behavior. And having this information will enable our clients, who are financial institutions, to secure their money and their clients' money, and it will enable our clients to have a user-friendly solution like Airome Technologies provides. So yeah, thank you, Pavel, thank you, team. We have some questions for Pavel. How many banks in Bahrain or in Gulf region have implemented the SDK security set up for online banking?
Well, from the sorry, was that to Pavel? Sorry, yeah, that's to Pavel. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah, I think
Pavel,
it's question for team. Yeah.
So I think for both of you, there are two questions. I think for Pavel, what about regulation in case of one-button agreement, which is how do you handle this?
Actually, when we're talking about regulations, this is a different question from country to country. Because of actually in the whole world we see two types of regulations in this area, and especially in area of transactions confirmations and agreement that was delivered from a user. The first regulation type is like In the two words, it tells us that two legal entities, for example, bank and end customer, can sign agreement between each other and do all of things regarding this agreement. And the second type of agreements, and this on regulatory level, government separates confirmation types based on its security and approvance level. For example, in Europe, they have a simple digital signature, simple confirmations, like a strong digital signature, strong confirmations, and qualified digital signature and qualified confirmations. So when we are talking about our products, we are talking about simple and strong security levels, because of our main goal is substitute SMS one-time password, token-based one-time password, and push notifications. And when we are talking about security from this point of view and from this goal, so our solution works on the same regulation level like an SMS. For example, if you are using SMS, which regulation type do you use? It can be agreement between you as a bank and end user, or it can be regulated by your government. So we think and we work on the same regulation level. If you need a more secured from regulatory point of view solutions, for example, for qualified signature, for qualified confirmations, usually it means that the solution that provide these services must be approved by government, and it means that it must be audited and like a certified. So we have experience in this area. Actually, one of our types, one of editions of our products have governmental certification in Russia. For now, we are in process of common criteria certification in Singapore. So we have experience in this area, and if you need the more if you need a higher level of certification and regulation, so we can provide this, we can do this. I think this is not a problem. So something like this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pavel, for the answer. We have another question. I think this is for team about the SDK. And I think that there was another question about how to integrate your platform with the current anti-fraud banking system. Sure. So can you comment on that, please?
Yeah, I'll comment on both. So to address the first question is that when we're feeding data into existing anti-fraud platforms, pretty much all anti-fraud platforms are designed in order to ingest some kind of API data. We've got out-the-box integrations with the majority of major anti-fraud platforms. In the Middle East, SAS is very popular, which is a core banking system that also has anti-fraud functionality. But all the main guys like FICO, GBG. I'll struggle to name loads off the top of my head, but Interlinks, Bottomline Technologies, ACX, ACL, those kind of basically anti-fraud platforms we have out the box straight into. For any others, it's extremely easy to then integrate the data, because it's just basically a piece of JSON that be coming into that platform with very clear parameters, like for example, risk scoring from 1 to 1,000, with 1,000 being very high, an event tag, and also a piece of information like it could be a hash of the username of the session, or it could be a transaction ID or session ID. Normally it's the session ID that we then link to inside of the anti-fraud system once we fed into it. So it's just essentially a question of enabling an API in the majority of cases. Then with regard to SDKs, it's pretty standard to integrate those. I mean, you just essentially deploy the SDK into the mobile application. Our engineers assist with that process and prepare the SDK from our side. It's very much a kind of like a drag and drop and then a testing procedure that then takes place for stability. And then that's deployed across, all of the end users as an update. So again, it's a very simple process. The customers never actually really notice that any changes have happened. The same goes for JavaScript being deployed onto, the web pages of a protected bank. That script is obfuscated as a normal bank script, and then the results of which are then sent to the bank directly and then proxied out to our engine for analysis. So it's pretty straightforward. I think someone also asked, are financial institutions in the GCC using these kind of solutions? Absolutely. We've got customers in both the GCC, Middle East, Africa, Europe, South Africa, Southeast Asia, the States, Australia. List is quite long. I think we haven't got much currently in South America, but then the maturity level there isn't very good. But pretty much everywhere where there is online fraud, we're seeing that banks are being very quick to adapt solutions that can help protect their customers more effectively. Because the issue of digital fraud is one that's now growing out of control.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you for this answer. So, like in few words, as I understand, it's like a couple of days required to try the system, and it's quite let's say easy, and it doesn't need a lot of efforts from the financial institution itself to implement it. Am I right?
For Secure Bank, it's very straightforward. It's just a question of, we've had POCs that have gone live within 2 weeks. And from our side, we're preparing a script and an SDK. From the bank side, they're putting a script on their website, and they're then deploying an SDK into that app. If they've got developers who aren't busy or want to prioritize this project, it can be done very quickly. And then what we do on a proof of concept is we then run the analysis for around normally 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the financial institution and the kind of fraud that they're seeing. And that then gives us a view of their fraud environment. They don't have to integrate during the POC into their anti-fraud system, because we're still going to be getting all of the detects and the scorings on potential attacks. But if they do want to stop them, they're more than welcome to have that integration as well switched on. So it's a pretty simple process. Certainly no hardware changes are required, just code-based stuff.
And Pavel, what about you? How quickly we can implement like a POC for customers in Bahrain?
So actually, the simplicity of integration and simplicity of the project is one of our major goals. One of our main goals. So our record proof of concept is 4 hours. So from providing SDK to mobile and applications developers to demonstration for top management how it works. It's about 4 hours. But this is some kind of record, and this is not this is POC, and this is not regular thing. And as Tim said, a lot of during integration, a lot of things depends on financial institution, because of from our experience, it takes more time to to invent where this green button that I agree to make this transaction should be situated in mobile application, even to realize all of the functionality. So it depends on business processes inside financial institution, inside the banks or another organization, which project stage must be done before before the solution goes to production. Actually, our average project it's about 1 or 2 months, but we have a very fast projects, like one of our last ones. We made all of the implementation in about 3 weeks for a few millions of users. So it's a very good point, we think. So
yeah, it's more than population of Bahrain.
maybe,
Yeah.
but as I said, simplicity is one of our main goals. So not even for end customers, but for end users, but for our customers too.
Okay, thank you, Pavel. Thank you, team, for your answers. I think that's it. We have all the questions answered, and if any of our guests has answers later, they can always send it to infosec@ngnintel.com. I shared this email to our chat section, and obviously all of you can find a lot of interesting solutions by NGN International at our website. Please subscribe to our Instagram, NGN International. We are trying to post our partners' solutions and a lot of useful information there. So I want to thank all of you who joined us today, this morning, and have a great day ahead. And I wish you all the best, and stay safe and secure. So thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, team.
Thank you very much, guys, and looking forward to visit when all of this quarantine is over. Take care. Bye-bye.
Definitely. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.